Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar that will focus on measuring students' learning through Cerebro's assessment. For those of you who are attending Cerebro's webinar series for the first time today, you may have already heard about Cerebro because you are already using it in your school, or someone from Cerebro has already presented our platform in your school in preparation for the new academic year. And there might be also some of you who are hearing Cerebro for the very first time today. And I hope you will be able to gain a deeper understanding of what we actually do and what we provide to schools right after this session. Just to give you a background about this webinar, Cerebro conducts a series of professional development programs throughout the year, and we discuss topics on teaching strategies, classroom management, educational technology, and the like. And we also conduct training activities and community events that feature the various innovations that our team at Cerebro has been working on, while relating these new innovations to the developments that are happening in the Philippine education system today. And for today, we will give special focus to the learning materials that are readily available in the Cerebro platform, particularly the ready-made quizzes that are built into our flagship e-learning platform. And we will also walk you through the process on how we determine which questions to include among the test items for the different learning activities while ensuring compliance with the standards set by the Department of Education. We will also provide our recommendations on how to properly create test questions that will accurately measure your students' level of understanding, especially that Cerebro is also giving teachers the ability to add their own questions in the test bank of your respective course pages. So our goals for today's webinar are simple. First is we would like to familiarize educators with Cerebro's assessment tools and their role in measuring students' learning progress. And along the process, also equip teachers with practical strategies for designing and administering effective assessments using Cerebro. And lastly, we would also like to enable participants to interpret assessment results accurately and use data to improve instruction and student outcomes. I would like to begin my presentation with this data from the World Watch section of the Philadelphia Trumpet, a news publication in the United States of America released on its published issue in August 2025, or August 2005 rather. According to this publication, about 13% of students who get low grades in exams are attributed to having faulty questions in their test papers. And I believe that the teachers attending our session for today would agree with me that this could really be true. While teachers are graduates of degrees related to their respective fields of specialization, and some would even have master's degrees or doctoral degrees, our expertise is more on the way we teach or deliver the lessons required by the curriculum to our students, and not specifically on creating test questions. To prove this point, we can actually see that when a teacher is applying for a teaching job in any school, whether it be on a private school or a public school run by the Department of Education, the teacher is only asked to conduct a teaching demonstration to see how well a teacher actually delivers a lesson. And there is no measurement of how good a teacher is able to create test questions for examinations. Even in the licensure examination for teachers or the LET, graduates of education related programs are only asked questions related to the theories related to the assessment of student learning. And there is actually no demonstration or evaluation of how well a teacher drafts questions for quizzes. And because of this, many, if not all teachers hired for teaching positions are accepted even without considering their mastery of student assessment. test construction, or even the art of questioning. According to one American university, there are practically 8 reasons why students perform poorly in examinations. And these are the following. Number one, the exam was not aligned with instructional activities. Number two, exam questions or instructions are ambiguous or confusing. Number three, students don't have enough time to thoughtfully complete the exam. Number four, students lack effective exam taking strategies. Number five, students suffer from some form of anxiety or stereotype. Number six, the format of exam was unfamiliar. Number seven, students did not prepare appropriately. And number eight, students lack prerequisite knowledge and skills. Let's take a look at these reasons one by one and try to see some examples of these. And if we ourselves as teachers are actually contributing to some of these reasons when we create questions for our examinations. So on the first reason that exams are not aligned with instructional activities, it says that students will perform poorly if they were taught in a different way from how they will be tested. This usually happens in subjects where physical performance is done in class, but the examination suddenly becomes theoretical. For example, in physical education subjects, teachers are instructing students to perform games, physical exercises, or some other fitness-related activities. But when the time for examination comes, students are given a pen and paper test, asking theories about these exercises, when in fact, it was taught in a different way by the teachers. Another example of this would be in technology and livelihood education or TLE subjects. There are times that TLE teachers are conducting cooking activities wherein the students will be taught how to cook meals properly inside a TLE laboratory or a school kitchen. But the major examination will again be in the form of a theoretical test where the students do not accurately or where the questions do not accurately represent the manner in which the teacher has actually taught the lessons to his or her students. So in the end, the students will not be able to answer the questions properly because the examination is not aligned with how the students or how the lessons were delivered to the students. Diba? Nagturo ka practically, practical exercises, but the examination was theoretical. There is a misalignment there. The second reason is that exam questions or instructions are ambiguous or confusing. And this is because teachers sometimes mix up their own knowledge with the student's level of understanding. Let's take the picture shown on the screen as an example. On a quiz in mathematics, the teacher is asking the students to find the difference between the numbers 8 and 6. And based on the student's answer, we are assuming that the student has not understood the question properly. Since the student said that 8 is all curly and 6 is not, referring to how the numbers look like and not on how the teacher expected the question to be answered. And of course, since we are all adults in this session, I'm assuming that we all have the same level of understanding and that we all know that the teacher in this scenario would like the student to subtract the numbers. But since the teacher and the student are not of the same age and are definitely not on the same educational level, there was a clear confusion that the student did not understand how his or her teacher expects him or her to answer that particular question. The third reason is that students do not have enough time to thoughtfully complete the exam. While we know that examinations are usually time-based and that students are expected to finish an exam within a prescribed period of time, we often fail to consider that the time we give to our students should also include the time they need to read and understand each question carefully, and not just the time they need to write their answers on their test papers. In fact, there are also some students who may require more time understanding the questions rather than merely answering them. We have all experienced this during our days as students, that there are times that we would like to examine carefully if the questions are trick questions, because there are times that teachers might include certain words that would make the meaning of a sentence entirely different. So students usually read and reread each question several times before finally deciding to provide their answers. The fourth reason is that students lack effective exam taking strategies. It is a very common misconception among students to think that in every examination, questions need to be answered in a specific order only, such as starting from number one up to the last item in the test. And as a result, they often don't distribute their time effectively and they end up rushing through questions or not answering them at all. When teachers create examinations, it is also very common to start with objective type questions at the very first part of the test, and the complexity of questions and types of tests increase for every succeeding part. For example, identification type of tests are usually at the beginning, where every question will give students 1 point for every correct answer. Then the questions with the higher points are usually at the end, such as the essay type questions with around 10 points for every answer are placed at the very last part of the examination, di ba? And because of this, students tend to answer questions with lesser points. And when the prescribed time for the test is about to end, the student is just about to begin answering the questions with the higher point allocations. As a result, some students who are unable to finish the last part of the test get lower scores because they only completed items with lesser points. The better strategy for students here is that they should quickly scan all the test items first and determine which questions they can answer the fastest that would also give them more chances of getting a higher score, and decide to answer these types of questions first. Then just go back to the other more difficult questions and those with lower point allocations at the end before the time for the exam runs out. The fifth reason is that students suffer from some form of anxiety or stereotype as they are often pressured of the testing environment, and they also feel anxious about the things that they cannot answer. When I was still teaching inside the classroom, one of the things I usually say during examinations is that any form of communication is considered cheating. And whenever I say that, uh, I really mean it. And I am referring to both verbal and nonverbal communication because even the slightest nonverbal gesture could also be interpreted by the teacher as cheating or a way of telling other students the answer to the questions in their examination. And for some students, being in this type of a testing environment adds to the pressure that they're already feeling whenever they are taking an exam. It's as if they cannot move at all and that they will instantly fail for doing something, on top of the fear on whether the lessons that they reviewed are part of the test or not, or if they will get a passing score or not. There are also other students who have already accepted their fate in life, no? That they are fully aware that they are not part of the so-called cream of the crop and that they are not among the smartest students in the classroom. So they will no longer give much effort in answering the questions in the exam because they already have some form of a stereotype in their minds. The sixth reason is that the format of the examination may be unfamiliar for the students. There are times that students have not taken a particular type of test in their lives before. So they absolutely have no idea on how to answer it. There are also times that some teachers tend to be a little too creative when designing exams. And I remember one teacher before, no, when I was still a department head in a university and I was checking the exams that they prepared. And that teacher wanted to test the students' way of following instructions. That teacher wrote this instruction in her exam. Write true if the statement is false and write false if the statement is true. Yes, of course, that would definitely test whether the students are reading the instructions properly or not. But is that really the goal of the test? Because in that case, the teacher is no longer measuring what needs to be measured based on the learning competencies indicated in the curriculum guide. The teacher is intentionally confusing the students to test their practical skills and not really testing their level of understanding of a particular topic or subject. The seventh reason is that students did not prepare appropriately. Well, there are different ways on how students can prepare for an exam, but some students spend time studying for an exam ineffectively and inefficiently, such as focusing too much on topics that they already understand rather than devoting more time on complex lessons that they do not understand fully yet. And there are also times that students have sleepless nights just to prepare for their examinations, only for their bodies to give up during the actual time of the exam. So in the end, the quiet test environment becomes an invitation for their bodies to sleep and recharge rather than answering the questions in the examination. And lastly, one reason is that some students lack prerequisite knowledge and skills needed for the exam. Even when students have effectively learned the new material being tested on an exam, they may perform poorly if relevant prerequisite knowledge is weak or lacking. For example, in a mathematics subject, a teacher giving an examination in algebra would tend to give complex mathematical questions. But students will only be able to answer these questions if they have the foundational mathematical skills, such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. If they have not mastered these foundational skills, then it would be very difficult for them to answer the questions in their examination. So going back to all the 8 reasons on why students perform poorly in examinations, we can say that 3 out of these 8 reasons may be addressed on the part of the teacher. And as teachers, we have the ability to reduce the instances of students performing poorly when taking tests. We can improve our students' test scores if, for number one, we can align the examination with the instructional activities that we do. For number two, we can improve our test questions and instructions so that they do not become ambiguous or confusing for our students. And for number six, we can ensure that our students are familiar with the type of test and questions that we are giving them. And once these 3 factors are addressed, we can expect to already see a significant improvement in our students' test scores and their performance when taking examinations. While the remaining 5 reasons are things that students will need to address at their own level. And those factors can only be addressed if the test items included in our examinations are actually, number one, assessing the achievement of learning outcomes for the particular unit or course, because there are instances that teachers do not actually consider what the curriculum guides require. This is especially true for the more senior teachers, since they have been teaching the same subject and the same topic for quite some time already, that they tend to reuse questions they have already used in the previous years without actually checking if these questions are still aligned and relevant to the current curriculum. It is also important, number two, that the examinations we create are actually measuring important concepts and their relationship to that particular unit and or course. Let's take this as an example. One teacher handling the TLE subject is supposed to teach the nutritional value of meals commonly served at home. However, instead of focusing on the activity, on whether the nutritional value of uh, meals are determined, no, rather than focusing on the nutritional value, the teacher asked the students to prepare and cook meals, and a panel of other teachers will decide who among the student groups produce the most delicious meal. Ano yung pinakamasarap? Yun yung mananalo. And the winning group will be given the highest score for that activity. Now, we can see in this example that the teacher failed to measure the important concepts in relation to the actual topic for that unit or subject, which is nutritional value. So, naging taste na yung labanan instead ng nutritional value na hinahanap doon sa learning competencies. Number three, it is also important that our test questions are aligned with the teaching and learning activities we conducted in relation to how we emphasize those concepts during our actual class discussions. For example, a teacher handling science classes, no, spent 3 days of the entire week focusing on the characteristics of a sun, of the sun, no, yung araw, the sun as the center of the solar system. When in fact, the questions in the examination covered all the planets in the solar system and not just about the sun, which is just a single part of the entire lesson. In that case, the teacher gave too much emphasis on something that is not even a big part of the examination. Kung focus dapat the entire solar system, humaba yung discussion sa sun. Yung questions about the planets, not specifically about the sun. So, mahirap yun. Number four, it is important that the questions are measuring the appropriate level of knowledge of the students. Of course, it would be improper for a teacher to give an extremely logical type of test to very young students who are only familiar with questions that elicit simple recall. So a teacher giving grade 1 students questions from a modified true or false type of test, where students are given the instruction to identify whether the statement is true or false, and if the statement is false, underline the word that makes the statement incorrect and provide the word that would make the statement correct. Imagine giving that to grade 1 students. That is definitely inappropriate for the students' level of knowledge and preparation. And lastly, for number 5, questions should have varying levels of difficulty. Not all questions should be too easy, and not all questions should be too hard to answer. Teachers should always remember that having varying levels of difficulty will allow our students to master the mix of lower and higher order thinking skills, such as, diba, as much as possible. Some questions should focus on factual recall and demonstration of knowledge, while some questions could elicit some application and analytical skills, and others should allow the students to do some sort of an evaluation and creation of new skills. So hindi lahat madali, hindi lahat mahirap, but there should be a good balance of different types of questions. In ensuring that students answer questions with varying levels of difficulty, it is important that we design items that are objective, or those that allow students to select the correct response from several alternatives or supply a word or short phrase answer. And sometimes it is also important to have items that are subjective, wherein students will have to present an original answer based on their own perception about the topic. Generally, objective type questions are easier to create because they are directly related to the lessons that we teach. And oftenly, teachers only need to revise the phrasing of a certain definition of a concept or a lesson to transform it into an objective type of question. For example, when we state in our discussions that Dr. Jose Rizal is the national hero of the Philippines, transforming this into an objective question will be as simple as turning it into who is the national hero of the Philippines. So simple transformation lang of the text. Meanwhile, subjective type of questions usually invoke a higher level in the Bloom's taxonomy, wherein students are asked to apply, analyze, synthesize, create, or evaluate meaning from what has already been discussed. For example, when a teacher asks students to analyze a particular text from a story or literature and develop meaning from it, then that would be a subjective item already, since the answer is not directly lifted from a book or any reference material. And it is important to note that there are specific instances when a teacher uh, needs to use objective type items rather than using subjective questions. Usually, objective questions are used when the group tested is large, and grading students' works individually would consume a lot of time to finish. Or in instances, if the teacher will reuse the test questions in the future, especially when the questionnaires or test booklets are not intended for single use. Examples of objective questions are multiple choice types of test, diba? True or false, matching type, completion type, and fill in the blanks. On the other hand, subjective items are usually used when the teacher will have enough time to grade the students' work individually, especially that grading using rubrics will be more time consuming than simply just giving 1 point for every correct answer. And additionally, when the goal is to measure students' attitude, behavior, perceptions, or critical thinking skills, and the teacher expects the answers to be different for each student, then subjective type questions are more appropriate. Examples of this are essay questions, problem solving requiring advanced thinking and critical analytical skills, and activities that require the actual performance of students. So yun, mga subjective types of questions yan. Nonetheless, whether we select between objective and subjective type of tests, it is still very essential to consider the reliability and validity of test questions. O, dalawa yan, reliability and validity. When we say the items are reliable, it means that the test is consistent and free from errors. And when we say that the test items are valid, the questions should accurately measure what is actually supposed to be measured. For example, we do not expect students to be graded by preparing for a dance performance when in fact the subject we are teaching is mathematics and the topic is about algebraic expressions. While dance performances may be applicable for other subjects or other topics such as in physical education or in the arts, it is both not reliable and valid when used for a mathematics examination or performance task. Let's take a look at this illustration. First, when an examination is both unreliable and invalid, the dots are scattered all over the target and not centered. The test is unreliable because the scores are inconsistent, since students may get very different results each time. And the test is also invalid because the test does not measure what it is supposed to measure. Second, when an examination is unreliable but valid, the dots are scattered around the center of the target. The test is unreliable because the scores are inconsistent, since students may obtain varying results each time. But the test is valid because it still measures what it is supposed to measure. Third, third illustration, when an examination is reliable but not valid, the dots are closely grouped together but far from the center of the target. The test is reliable because the scores are consistent across repeated attempts. But the test is not valid because it does not measure what it is supposed to measure. And fourth, when an examination is both reliable and valid, the dots are closely grouped together at the center of the target. The test is reliable because the scores are consistent across repeated attempts. And the test is also valid because it accurately measures what it is supposed to measure. So, the first step when creating an examination is always to determine the objectives of testing. If the goal is to identify the student's current knowledge of a subject, their skill sets and capabilities, and clarify misconceptions before teaching takes place, then that would be called a diagnostic assessment. Examples of this test include pre-tests or those given at the beginning of every lesson to check for students' prior knowledge about a particular topic. Self-assessments, which is a structured process of reflecting on one's own skills. Performance and behavior. So, pwede rin niyang i-measure doon sa mga self-assessment. You can also use it to measure strengths and weaknesses and other areas for improvement. Discussion board responses, which also aims to check for prior knowledge and existing feelings about a particular topic, while also inciting interest about the subject matter. Or in Cerebro, we call that the forums, no? Yung ating mga discussion boards. And one-on-one interviews, which allows for varied answers on lived experiences of the interviewees. And when the goal is to provide feedback naman and information during the instructional process while learning is taking place and while learning is occurring, nangyayari ngayon, then that would be classified as a formative assessment. It is called formative since the teacher still has the opportunity to redesign or reform the lesson based on how well the students already understand the topic and identify whether the timing is already right to move on to the next lesson or not. Examples of this type of assessment are observations and feedback during in-class activities, homework exercises, reflection journals, question and answer sessions, which we also call as recitation activities, and individualized conferences or yung consultation sessions between the teacher and the student. Lastly, when the examination takes place after the learning has been completed and provides information and feedback that sums up the teaching and learning process, then that would be called a summative assessment. Since it already provides a summary of everything that the student has learned or acquired during the teaching and learning process. Examples of this, of course, are the major examinations, mga periodical tests, final exams, term papers, projects, portfolios, and performance tasks. The second step in test construction is to prepare test specifications. I don't know if you're doing this, but this is a very important step that teachers usually forget unless specifically required from them by the school. The preparation of the table of specifications or the TOS is the most important task in the planning stage of test construction because it serves as the teacher's guide on which items to include in the examination and how many items per topic should be included, di ba? Additionally, it also serves as a blueprint that aligns each instructional objective or learning competency with the different test items and specific types of tests to be used for each group or of questions or parts of the test. When preparing the test specifications or the TOS, it is important to first determine the weight of the different instructional objectives, and second, to also determine the weight of the different content areas. Usually, the weight of each objective or learning competency and the content areas to be covered are already included naman or indicated in the curriculum guide from DepEd. Specifically, the duration or the number of sessions or hours that each topic should be discussed in class. For example, if an examination is given at the end of the month, and there are 4 topics to be covered in that examination, it is important to measure how long a particular lesson was discussed. If the examination will have 100 items and one topic is discussed for 2 weeks, while the remaining 3 topics were compressed in the remaining 2 weeks, then topic 1 should cover 50% of the entire exam, while the remaining 50% should be divided among the 3 remaining topics covered during the period. The third step is to determine the types of test items to be included in relation to what the learning competencies actually need to measure. And finally, the fourth step is the actual preparation of the TOS or the table of specifications. And when determining the item types to be included, teachers are usually guided by the Bloom's taxonomy, developed by a group of educators led by Benjamin Bloom in 1956. So in this illustration, we can see that the most basic level of competency is placed at the bottom of the pyramid. And this would usually refer to the foundational skills that students need to master. The bottom of the pyramid starts with basic knowledge. And as the student progresses, he further masters comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and the highest level of competency is the student's ability to evaluate what he or she has learned. This pyramid was eventually revised in the year 2001, and we can see that the bottom of the pyramid, which again serves as a foundational skill, is now remembering. And the student progresses, to understanding, applying, analyzing, and evaluating, and a new skill at the topmost level is added. And that refers to creating new meaning from what a student has already learned. So it's not enough that the student evaluates what he or she has learned. It's important now, in the new Bloom's taxonomy, that students create meaning from what they have learned. And since we are already now in the digital age, several theories also suggest that we apply Bloom's taxonomy into the common activities done by our students nowadays. We can see that remembering covers bookmarking, copying, highlighting, and searching. Understanding covers journaling, tweeting, tagging, and subscribing. Applying covers mind mapping, surveying, linking, and validating. Evaluating covers grading, testing, posting, and moderating. And creating covers blogging, filming, podcasting, and directing. So as the student starts from the bottom, which are considered as lower order thinking skills, he eventually progresses to the top, going to the higher order thinking skills. And these skills are very much applicable today as we determine which type of activities or performance tasks should we ask our students to do in relation to the different lessons that we teach. Let's take a look at this curriculum guide as an example. And please pardon me for using the curriculum guide of the old senior high school curriculum and not the one for the strengthened senior high school program. But that is intentional because more teachers are already familiar with this curriculum guide than the new one that will be launched pa lang by June of this year. And here we can see that the fourth column already clearly indicates which learning competencies should be covered for the first topic about the nature and elements of communication. If we look closely at the verbs used at the beginning of each competency, we can see that we can directly attribute it to a particular skill in the Bloom's taxonomy: defining, explaining, differentiating, distinguishing, using, and demonstrating. So it would be easier for us to classify where each competency should fall under, no, in the table of specifications that we'll be creating. And when we put these competencies in our table of specifications or the TOS, it is important to consider the time we spend in teaching each competency and determine its percentage from the total number of instructional hours that we spent for the entire period. In this case, we have a total of 10 hours. And since the first competency about defining communication is just taught for 1 hour, it means that it only covered 10% of the total number of instructional hours. So if we want to create a 50-item test, no, using these competencies, defining communication should only be allocated 5 points or 10% of the total number of 50 points for that entire examination. And we will just follow the same computation for the rest of the other competencies covered in the same period in the same examination. Now that we have already identified the number of test items for each competency, we will distribute the test items based on where it falls under the Bloom's taxonomy. Since defining communication has an allocation of only 5 items and the verb define is clearly related to remembering in the Bloom's taxonomy, we will put it in that appropriate column or category. And we will do so for the rest of the other competencies and test items. Now, if we look at the total, we have 5 items for remembering, 15 items for understanding, also 15 for applying, and another 15 items for analyzing, all for a total of 50 items for that particular examination. So that is how we create our TOS or the table of specifications. So, pinag-iisipang mabuti, hindi lang tayo basta maglagay ng question about this topic. It is important that we identify what are the learning competencies, how many hours did we spend for each learning competencies, and what particular level of the Bloom's taxonomy do each learning competency fall under. And now, the third step in test construction is to finally prepare the item types to be included in the examination. The most common type of test that teachers use, which is also the recommended type of test of the Department of Education, is multiple choice. This is because multiple choice can be used for simple remembering, which is good for lower order thinking skills, and even for advanced analytical skills, especially when students are evaluating which among the choices is the best answer for a particular question, which is also good for mastering one's higher order thinking skills, no? Additionally, allowing our students to master how to answer multiple choice types of tests will allow them to be more familiar with important examinations that they will have to take in the future, such as the National Achievement Test or the NAT, the National Career Assessment Examination or the NCAE, their college entrance examinations, and even the PRC licensure exam or the board exam after they graduate from college. Lahat yan, multiple choice, di ba? So it's not true na porket multiple choice, ang dali sa mga estudyante kasi nandyan yung answer sa pagpipilian. Kasi, bakit? Madali ba ang board exam? Madali ba ang licensure exam? No, not all the time. So, it elicits higher order thinking skills. And according to various studies, and as we usually know already, a good multiple choice item is composed of three parts. The STEM, which is the question itself, the correct answer, which is our expected response from the student, and the distractors, which are the incorrect choices that we present to our students. Not to confuse them, no? But to allow them to think critically and determine if the distractors can potentially be considered as correct answers too. So ideally, the options that we include should have a correct choice, a true but unrelated choice, a false but related choice, and a false and unrelated choice. This is also the reason why most multiple choice questions have four choices, di ba? Labeled as A, B, C, and D. However, there are some exams that would also include common additional distractors such as all of the above or none of the above, which are also acceptable depending on how the questions are designed. Now, let's try to evaluate if these questions are good questions or not. First question, which of the following types of examination is not considered an objective test? A, multiple choice, B, identification, C, essay, or D, true or false? Is this a good question or not? What do you think? Is it a good question or not? If your answer is yes, then you are correct. This is because the word not is not meant to confuse the students in understanding the question properly, but is properly given emphasis. As you can see, it is underlined and printed in boldface to provide emphasis and avoid confusion. So students will easily understand that the one being asked for is the one that does not fall within the required parameters. Second question, which of the following types of assessment focuses on the common sources of error encountered by students so that the learning difficulties could be pinpointed and remedied? A, diagnostic assessment, B, formative assessment, C, summative assessment, or D, none of the above. So is this a good question or not? If your answer is yes, then you are correct. While it is not prohibited to use none of the above or all of the above as distractors, it is important to note that the teacher should ensure that they are used sparingly and that they are not always the correct answer. Again, the use of none of the above or all of the above is not prohibited but should be used with caution. Third question. It is considered as an important religious event celebrated by Roman Catholics every December. A, Easter Sunday, B, Ash Wednesday, C, Christmas Day, D, Immaculate Conception. So is this a good question or not? If your answer is no, then you are correct. It is not a good question because there should only be one correct or best answer. In this case, both options C, Christmas Day, and D, Immaculate Conception falls on December. And since the question is only asking for a singular answer, as proven by saying it is considered as an important religious event, then there should only be one answer that should fit the question. Fourth question. The teacher can accept favors or gifts from learners, their parents, or others in their behalf in exchange for requested concessions, especially if undeserved. A, yes. B, no. C, it depends if the price or gift is expensive. Is it a good question or not? If your answer is no, then you are correct. The problem here is not because it only has three choices, because having three choices is also allowed. The problem is that the options or the distractors are not equal in length. And some students might think that since the teacher exerted more effort in one option because it is longer than the other choices, then that would be most likely to be the correct answer. But it is not. All options should be homogeneous and nearly equal in length. Fifth question. Photosynthesis is the process by which plants use sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide to create oxygen and energy in the form of sugar. Meanwhile, diffusion refers to the blank. A, loss of materials from cells or plants and animals. B, tendency of particles to be evenly distributed. C, spreading of particles toward the bottom of a container. Or D, movement of particles from lesser to greater concentration. So is this a good question or not? So if your answer is no, then you are correct. The STEM or the question itself should only contain one main idea, and in this case, two concepts are introduced: photosynthesis and diffusion. This would only trigger confusion among the students on what is actually being asked. Is the question about photosynthesis or is it about diffusion? And the students might also get confused in determining which answer is related to the question being asked. So, sixth question. The following are considered as home furniture except chairs, A, chairs, B, tables, C, cabinets, or D, plants. Is this a good question or not? If your answer is yes, then you are correct. When providing distractors, all options should be parallel with each other. And in this case, since the first option is in plural form, all other distractors should also be in plural form. If one is in singular form, then all options should also be in singular form. Seventh question. The role of the judiciary branch of the government is to blank. A, create laws. B, interpret laws. C, implement laws. Or D, evaluate laws. Is this a good question or not? If your answer is yes, then you are correct. This is because placing the blank at the end of an incomplete statement makes the flow of the sentence more natural. Eighth question. It is the date of the Philippine independence from Spanish forces as declared by President Emilio Aguinaldo. A, December 30, 1986. B, May 28, 1898. C, June 12, 1898. And D, July 4, 1946. Is this a good question or not? What do you think? So if your answer is yes, then you are correct. This is because as much as possible, the distractor should be arranged in a logical order. And since in this case, the options are all dates, they should be arranged in a chronological order, starting from the earliest date up to the most recent date. Ninth question. Which of the following is or are considered mixtures? 1, air. 2, juice. 3, seawater. 4, steel. A, 1 only. B, 1 and 2 only. C, 1, 2, and 4 only. Or D, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Is this a good question or not? So if your answer is yes, then you are correct. When there is a tendency for the options to be redundant or lengthy, be creative in designing that question so both the question and the options are not too wordy. Number 10, no? 10th question. Which president of the Republic of the Philippines established the National Service Training Program law? A, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo with a double R. B, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo with a single R. C, Gloria Macapagal. Or D, Gloria Arroyo. Is this a good question or not? Yan, baka maraming guilty sa ganitong klase ng tanong. So, if your answer is no, then you are correct. This is because when writing distractors, teachers should be mindful of the possible incorrect responses that students might make. Again, our goal is not to intentionally confuse students, but to make sure that the students actually meet the required learning competencies in the curriculum guide. So to sum up, here are some of the best practices that teachers can observe when designing examinations. Here are clear explanations, no, for each item. First is to try to have a colleague answer your test questions before the students do. Ang explanation kasi, di ba, having another teacher or expert review and answer your test items to check for clarity, accuracy, and difficulty, your colleague can spot ambiguous wording, unintended correct answers, or errors that the test constructor might overlook, helping improve both reliability and validity. Second is to be sure that the question is clear within the STEM so that students do not have to read the various options to know what the question is asking. So the STEM or the main question should be complete and understandable on its own. If students need to read all the choices just to figure out what is being asked, the item may confuse them and affect their performance. Clear stems ensure that the test measures knowledge rather than guessing skills. Our goal is not to check kung ang estudyante ay nanguhula o hindi, di ba? But to check if they really understand the lesson or not. Third is to avoid writing items that lead students to choose the right answer for the wrong reasons. For instance, avoid making the correct alternative the longest or most qualified one. Now, students sometimes rely on test-taking strategies rather than actual knowledge. So if the correct answer is noticeably longer or more detailed, students may pick it based on pattern recognition rather than understanding. This reduces the validity of the test. Fourth is to design items that tap students' overall understanding of the subject. So avoid the temptation to write items that are difficult because they are taken from obscure passages such as footnotes. No? So test questions should assess meaningful understanding, not trivial or hidden details. Questions based on obscure content may make the test unnecessarily difficult and unfair. So, measuring memory of minor details rather than true comprehension, parang that's not fair for our students. We are not measuring what needs to be measured correctly. And lastly, is to consider a formal assessment of your multiple choice questions with what is known as an item analysis of the test. So item analysis involves evaluating each test question after it has been administered using data such as difficulty index and discrimination index. So this helps identify which items are too easy, too hard, or ineffective in distinguishing between high and low performing students, allowing for continuous improvement of the test. So remember our illustration earlier, no, yung target board. We always need to make sure that the test items are both reliable and valid at the same time. So for those of you who are already using Cerebro, especially for subjects that are generally or generically part of the DepEd curriculum and even for college general education under CHED's curriculum, you would know that there are already ready-made tests that are available in the Cerebro platform. So these questions are already designed in multiple choice format because as mentioned earlier, this is the recommended format by the Department of Education to prepare the students in taking the NAT, the NCAE, and even the PRC board exam in the future. However, some teachers might not be aware that you can actually edit the questions. So if you want to make some modifications in the way they are in the question, in the way the questions are presented, you can actually edit these questions. To edit a question, simply click on the edit question link on the left side of the question. So makikita nyo yung yung naka-box na yan. Then you can now edit the question on the text field. Pwede nyong pahabain, paikliin, or maybe change it into a different question if you want. So you can edit the questions. You can even change the number of points allocated for that particular question by changing the default mark. If you want to make the question have the credit of 2 points each instead of 1 point for every correct answer, you can do so. 5 points ang isang tanong, pwede rin naman yon. You can also shuffle the choices. So what is on letter A for one student would be different for other students. And you can also edit or add more choices or distractors as you see fit. If you want to have more than 4 choices, pwede mag-add ng question ng choices o ng distractors. If you want to have multiple correct answers, pwede. So depends on what you want to do with your questions. And teachers can also add their own questions in the test by simply clicking questions on the blue navigation bar. No? Minsan ito yung hindi alam ng iba mga teachers that they can add their own questions. Baka kasi yung iba, nakokontian na some of our tests are 10 items lang. Gusto nila, ang quiz nila 20 items. You can add more questions. So here you can add a new question and add an item from the test bank or choose a random item from the existing questions from the test bank. You can choose any type of question such as multiple choice, true or false, matching type, short answer, which we commonly know as identification, numerical answer, especially for mathematical tests, essay, calculations, or even drag and drop type of tests. Pwede kayong gumawa. So you're not limited to multiple choice. You can create other types of questions in Cerebro. And one good feature also is that when a quiz has already been accomplished by students, teachers can actually get a detailed item analysis of the test. To do this, you just need to click on results from the blue navigation bar. Then you will now see which items did the students answer correctly or incorrectly. Of course, I just covered the personal information of the students who took the exam, no, for privacy purposes. But you will see that merong detailed na breakdown or detailed na chart, no, dito sa table kung ano yung mga items na nasagot ng mga estudyante ng tama at mali. There is also a graph that will show you the distribution of student scores. So you will know how many students got a perfect score and what is the most common score among all students. Makikita nyo yung distribution. No? Balanced ba siya? May bell curve ba siya? Skewed ba siya to the left or to the right? You can also see the specific answers that each student provided for each question. So you will know what the students' common errors are. And there is also a report on the total number of attempts, the students' average scores, and data on the highest and lowest scores. There is also data on the mean, standard deviation, and skewed distribution of all attempts, including consistency and error ratio. Ito yung mga natutunan natin when we are studying education before, pero parang ayaw nating tandaan kasi napakahirap gumawa ng item analysis. But these things are made easier already in the Cerebro platform. You can also see how each test item performed, including facility index, random guess score, discrimination index, and others, giving you a detailed analysis of whether it was a good question or not. So nakikita nyo na may mga naka-highlight. Siguro ito yung mga questions na naging medyo masyadong madali o masyadong mahirap para sa ating mga estudyante. Teachers can also organize questions in the test bank so they can create question categories or import questions from other sources. So to do this, you simply need to click the question bank link on the blue navigation bar. So yung sa question bank kasi natin, pwede tayong mag-categorize. So for example, topic 1, ito yung mga questions. Topic 2, ito yung mga questions. Topic 3, ito yung mga questions. Tapos, if you want to create a longer version of the test, you can combine the questions from the different topics, no, from the question bank and use it for longer examinations. Pwede yon. So here, you can import questions created in various formats, such as the Aiken format, or those created in commonly available tools, such as Notepad. No, sa mga gumagamit ng Windows, usually meron naman tayong Notepad na pre-installed sa ating mga computers or sa ating devices. So you can use that to create questions in bulk. So in this example, I have already created questions in the Notepad software in my computer. And if I want to import all these questions, no, in bulk, I can do that easily. Paano? I will just choose Aiken format. So meron dyang radio button. Click ko lang yan. Then, upload the file directly into the system. Then I can already use the questions I uploaded in the test that I am creating. So, ganun lang kadali. Ginawa ko yung question sa Notepad para sama-sama na silang nandoon. Nandun na rin yung choices. Upload using Aiken format. Then the questions are already uploaded to the Cerebro platform. And aside from the traditional types of tests, I can also create interactive tests using HTML5 packages or H5P. And to do this, I will just click Add an activity or resource. Then select the H5P interactive content icon from the choices. So if I want my students to watch a video, then a question would pop up on their screen from time to time so I can check if they're actually watching the video or not. I will just need to create an interactive video. So here you can see that while the video plays, you can add some buttons that the students can click, and from time to time, you can also pop up questions that your students need to answer before they can continue watching the rest of the video. If, for example, no, the student is unable to answer the question correctly, you can force the student to repeat watching the video all over again. Tingnan natin. Ayan. So for example, merong maling sagot yung estudyante. So nakalagay watch intro again. Then when the student clicks that, they will have to watch the video all over again. And that ends my presentation for today. If you would like to reach out to us to see how we can help your teachers and schools implement effective assessments or contact us, you can easily contact us, no? Using our website, cerebro.ph. Or pwede rin naman na if you're already a client of Cerebro, you may reach out to our product specialist assigned to your school. So for Cerebro's Luzon team, we have Jimel, Luis, and Sheila. And for our Visayas and Mindanao team, we have Darwin, Yancis, Irish, and Kim. They are very much willing to collaborate with you in maximizing the use of Cerebro's resources in your institution. So thank you very much for joining and good morning.